Reconvene.
I'm just having some fun.
And our agenda item,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
hello,
Bang it some more. There you go.
I'm being told I need to bang the gavel more, okay, to get everyone's attention. Okay, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the use of drone technology to improve city operations.
Good morning, council and community. My name is Lance Wissinger. I am an advocate for drone technology education and awareness. There's a lot of misconceptions that drones are used mainly as toys and just for videography. I'm here to show you guys that there's a few more things that we can do using drones. I know the Air Force guys here, so I'll refer to them as UAVs. There's no such thing actually as a commercial or consumer drone. Those are only used in the military. But for the sake of familiarity, everyone calls them drones here. So to give you a quick little introduction, this is just a base overview of a couple of the drones that are available. This is one that's used a lot through commercial technology, construction projects, emergency management. This is one of the larger drones. It's about 2 feet wide. You'll see a lot of these, like I said, specifically in construction. This one is probably the most common one that you'll run across. It's the DJI Phantom 4 Pro. Relatively inexpensive, very reliable. Most consumers will fly these types of drones, and these are mainly used just for production and photography. This is a fixed wing. This is just one example. Again, these are just examples of the basics drones that you would see in the air. This is a Parrot Disco. Has a pretty good range on it. It's a fixed wing, stays up longer, gets more information. So getting into what I'm trying to present to you guys today, changing every industry. The drone industry has been involved in multiple aspects of life as we move along today. This is a couple of examples of how the UAVs are used in city management, public safety, and public works. July of 2016, Hawaii National Park Service brings UAVs to identify a threat killing off palm trees. As recent as the eruption that was going on with the volcano last year, or earlier this year in Hawaii, they were using drones to monitor where that was going and following up with that. Using UAVs to monitor 18,000 kilometers of pipeline through Great Britain. February 2017, UAVs and infrared were used to successfully locate 5 missing skiers in British Columbia. Specifically here, using it for shoreline. If someone is lost at sea, we're able to use drones to go out and have a much broader scope of what we're looking at. March of 2017, drones were used to determine the stability of a roof in a Bronx fire. Using thermal imaging, we can tell whether the structure is still stable and whether firefighters are able to enter into the structure. Getting into infrastructure, we are able to do mapping, routine construction progress, progression scans, 3D modeling, 360 photo video, line of sight visualization, volumetric measurements, contour and elevation maps, thermal imaging, UAV and ROV infrastructure inspections. I will get into those a little bit more as I go along. This is just mainly an introduction as to what we can do with each of these. In utilities, photos of solid waste and recycling for troubleshooting, structure and asset assessment, inspection of towers, reservoirs, drains, pipes, leak identification, landfill analysis. Fire response, we can do search and rescue, make sure that the water is hitting the hottest spot, make sure that we're hitting the bottom of the fire, that we're not just wasting time hitting something that's not even going to put out the fire. Determining structural integrity, as I said before, tracking heat signatures, wildfire management, which we've done a little bit of down here, specifically with the wildfires that we've had earlier in the spring. Investigation and inspection. That picture specifically was chosen to use the thermal imaging that we use. We can actually fly over the firefighters and make sure that they are not overheating. That has been used a couple times I know Cape Coral Fire Department has used that a couple times. Disaster response, assess damage, locate victims, locate potential hazards, assess ongoing threats, and stormwater management. This picture was specifically from the flooding event of last August. Fire trucks from Cape Coral were not able to access certain parts of the city, so we went out with them with a drone, got as far as they could go. We put the drone up in the rain and went out and saw if there was anyone we needed to evacuate or needed to drop supplies off to. Thankfully, we did not. The water wasn't as bad as it could have been, and that was the break in the berm of the north end of Cape Coral. Investigation, so police investigation, active shooters. We can send drones there's caged drones, so you can actually fly them inside. So if there's a active shooter, a school shooting, something like that, before active personnel could actually go in, we could actually send a mini drone in. Crime and traffic accident scene analysis. We can do accident reconstruction using the information given to us by the FHP and taking that and reconstructing the accident in a 3D model. And bomb inspection, thankfully we have not had to use any of that yet, but it is capable just like with the bomb squads. Getting into golf courses and greenways, this is where we've done the most work, maintenance, mapping, elevation models, vegetation, and green health. Golf courses obviously are very popular down here in Florida, and we have certain types of sensors that you're able to see if you're watering correctly, if you have issues with your greens, with your fairways, nematodes that are infecting it. It's a process that we are currently working on and building to make even better. There we go. And then solar. We've done some work with Babcock Ranch on their solar field, diagnostics, identifying hotspots, thermal inspections to detect defective panels, 2D and 3D imaging, and visual inspections. Another company did a solar inspection for a company in Colorado. They had multiple broken solar panels. They went out there. It usually takes them about a month to inspect all of their solar panels. This guy did it in a day and a half and saved them $150,000 just to do that inspection. Wow. Getting more specifically into how the services work, there's 2D ortho imagery. This is a series of pictures put together to make a map. This is actually the school out at Babcock Ranch when it was first being built. It saves time, gets real perspective without the cost of traditional flyover. 2D orthogonal images are highly detailed, allowing you to gather incredible accurate progression data. So this is, we use this for utility work, construction work. An example of that, there's a 42-inch forced water main going through the Dunbar area of Fort Myers that was a weekly map that as the construction progressed on, they could see exactly where the construction was going, and they had a much better idea of a time frame of when it would be finished. 3D point cloud mapping. This is actually something that I thought would be specific to Port Charlotte and Charlotte County, Punta Gorda. This gives you an idea exactly of how your elevations are and your floodplains are going to work. This is a detention pond in Westminster, Colorado that we mapped and built the 3D model of. The actual image, you could take it, you can manipulate it, move it around, and see exactly just how much elevation or depth that you have in that particular model. Disaster response, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about with the flooding event and Hurricane Irma. We were deployed out of the Emergency Operations Center during Hurricane Irma and was one of the first companies to do so. Through an emergency operations center. Volumetric scans, this goes to examples of earth moving. You have a certain amount of dirt that you need to have moved from point A to point B. Certain sensors that we have using LiDAR, we can tell you whether 8 ounces of dirt has been moved from point A to point B. Contour and elevation, that goes along with the 3D mapping, tells you exactly where you're at, where your floodplains are at, if you're going to have low-lying areas. Looking to the future with contour and elevation, we're using a process so that we can map, we're hoping to map most of Charlotte County so that we can have a better mosquito control program. This would tell you where all the hot spots are, where we won't have to do adulta sighting as much. We could do a lot more of the larva sighting. Cuts down on putting the carcinogens in the air that we're flying over using the dibrome. This is all preventative, so we know exactly where each hotspot is and how much water should be in that area. Thermal imaging. This is a water main off of Daniels Parkway in Fort Myers. They were having a serious issue with leaking in a brand new pipe that they had just put in 2 years ago. rather than digging it up and trying to figure out where the leaks were, we flew over with the drone using thermal imaging just at daybreak and found a couple of cool spots or actually a couple of warm spots because the water stays at 82 degrees and the air temperature and ground temperature was just under 80. It was about 77, 76 degrees that day. So we were able to find these couple spots. So thermal imaging works for finding leaks, finding anything where if there's air control. So if you're losing air conditioning in a home or if you're having leaks in your roof, there's a myriad of reasons to use thermal imaging with the drone technology. Ecosystem management, this goes along with the greens and park spaces. Something that we had talked about with Sanibel was actually tracking their coyote program using this type of imagery, following and tagging their local wildlife. So this is anything from making sure that you have taken care of invasive species to making sure that your greenways are taken care of and tracking wildlife. Traditional photography, videography, I probably don't need to get into that too much. I'm sure everyone is aware of drones being able to do that type of work. Oil and gas pipeline monitoring, also water, sewage pipeline monitoring. We do some of this in Colorado that just to make sure that there's no leaks, make sure everything is up to standards. On top of that, we are working to get into asset management and tracking. This is Babcock Ranch. Solar farms, forestry, mining, agriculture, industrial property. We also are monitoring the M4 construction to make sure that they have the right drainage and runoff so that they're not just running off into any which direction. And then getting into plans for the future, ecological monitoring, mosquito control, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, water management, medical delivery. We're looking at some larger drones and possibly doing ambulatory services and getting into a taxi service using a drone that is flying currently in Dubai. We feel like Southwest Florida has the best area to do this. They're pushing for regulation in Las Vegas and Dallas, both of which are landlocked cities, and so we're hoping that maybe with the ability to fly over water, more so for the pilot program, that we'll have an opportunity to do so here. Ideally, it would be like a gondola ride without a cable. So you could go from point A to point B, slide your credit card and go to where you need to be and be there in about 15 to 20 minutes without any traffic. Ideally, that would grow to a point where it would be a larger scale system that would run to, if you were leaving from here, you could fly up to Miami, Orlando, Tampa, and be there in less than an hour. And that should be about it. There's just a picture of Babcock Ranch, sorry. So if there's any questions or comments, I'll be happy to answer those.
John, you brought this to the agenda?
Yeah, the reason why I brought this is that I see now with, I've seen this elsewhere, with my first thought with this was with the new building code and the fact that we have rising seas. I see that as one reality, but then we have Public Works has one thing. Like I noticed, like in the historic district, we have situations now where we have flooding, a lot more flooding, and a lot of the flooding actually is actually caused by new structures being there because they have to build higher and higher walls and things like that. And I'm saying part of it is I'm thinking like for the city, let's say it's a city where we'd like 3D mapped where we'd actually know where water flows were. We'd be able to better coordinate with the building department because sometimes we're used to a certain reality, and the reality we're in now is a different reality. And that's probably the main of it, which I've seen, is that I'm just seeing these, and we may even have a code even change even this year. We may have to even be higher above sea level, which will protect a particular house, but it doesn't take into account the effect on the surrounding structures. And so I'm just thinking for us, we're going to have to be probably more and more holistic thinking and just how we do things in general. And so I just wanted to have us have just some ideas about the kind of things that could be possible. And in general, just even with the operations, even things like looking at our pipes, if we can not have to have everything be dug up to see or to repair, we can actually use off thermal imaging. Just different things. I'm just saying we're in a new time, and there is technology that can help us. And so I'm thinking there's some ways we can maybe have some efficiency or cost savings based on implementing new technologies.
Certainly drone technology is going to have a change on best practices for determining things. It seems to me like maybe I see the pictures that come out in the weekly newsletter about the progress on our RO plant. Those have to be done by a drone.
Well, they're done by the contractor.
Yes, but I mean, it's using drone technology, I'm sure.
We put Tom Jackson in a chair with a lot of balloons.
I want to see that. That would be very interesting. Gary?
Relative to Tom Jackson, since you mentioned him and the piping issue here, I just a point of information that much of Punta Gorda has cast iron mains that were laid after World War II. Ironically, cast iron mains that were manufactured prior to World War II were of a thicker millage and have a 100-year life, whereas cast iron after World War II typically have somewhere between a 50 and 60-year life, typically. And we are seeing leaks occur and so forth. We have a situation where we have a high water table with salt, et cetera. And we may have, this type of technology could be used possibly to help us preemptively maintain a infrastructure beyond what its normal years would be in an economical way before it's replaced with plastic. Now today, I think most everything's plastic because of those issues. But just a point of experience that cast iron does not last forever, and cast iron since World War II lasts even less. So,
Debbie?
So explain to me what you're offering us. Are you a consulting firm that comes in when we need you? Are you somebody who trains our staff to operate drones?
We can
How
do.
does this work?
I personally am a consultant. I used to own a drone company. We've now merged with another larger company. But I am here mainly just for education, just to give people an idea that there are other things to do with drones. If someone has a question or a subject that we need to take a look at, I'd be happy to do that. But I'm not here actually representing anyone today except the industry as a whole.
Then explain to me the industry as a whole. Do you provide like on-call services? Like
Absolutely.
we would say we have a fire, we need you to come, and you would come?
We could set that up. So specifically for Punta Gorda, if we were to do something like that, I would have to have a pilot in the area, which we could set up. And then they would be on call for you guys. Just as long as that we have that access.
Okay.
Howard?
Per our procurement rules, he cannot come here and represent a particular company right now. He's basically providing education.
Absolutely.
That's all he's doing.
Okay, my question was.
So whichever
then-
company it would be,
Okay.
they could potentially have someone on call for you, absolutely.
Okay, that service is available. We
Right.
could also buy a drone. That's my question, is
Right.
that right? Okay.
We could.
I mean, not from him, I'm just saying it's out there nebulously.
You could
Yeah.
also, you could potentially buy a drone, you could have the education done in-house. We have run across a lot of people that we've worked with them before, they've seen how it works, and now that they've
Okay.
moved in-house where we've actually done training with them, so.
All right, that answers my question, thanks.
I would expect that because our staff is very involved with industry associations, that they're probably seeing, for example, on Public Works, I know, Rick, you're heavily involved with the American Public Works Association, that there's probably opportunities at their meetings to talk about drone technology. So it's something that I would expect staff is probably looking at. I think about, Todd, your background with GIS, that you probably,
For the record, Todd Helt, GIS analyst with the city. Obviously, we're very excited about drone technology here at in the city, and the data particularly. We are already using data through consultants, particularly Urban Design has a project right now for infrastructure analysis at Bethel St. Mark. So we will be receiving the data. We actually got the preliminary data yesterday, the drone imagery. And I'm sure at some point, once we finish review of it, we'll be sharing some of that information with you all as well. But
That's great.
it's very exciting imagery. Consultants, it's a way to collect data. Consultants will use that to collect data from the rapid information gathering standpoint. Part of the excitement is that we'll be able to, in a disaster, we'll be able to collect data for particular areas very quickly, based on either having our own system or a contractor contracted to do that. But the key is you have to be able to get it done quickly. There's no, procurement process that you can get into at that point. So, but anyway, the data is very exciting. We're thrilled with what we've seen so far and the potential for technologies in every department, really.
I can imagine that it will help give some of our departments more an ability to do things that they could not have done before when you're land-based, with some of the, like, code compliance and things like that, maybe.
Well-
But I don't want to introduce the idea that we're like looking over people's shoulders, it's like, that's a scary notion. So it's like, we need to balance what we do with all of this. I'm seeing all these heads shaking back here.
When the council is done with their questions, I have a question as a follow-up to your statement.
Yeah, because,
I just have one quick question, because you mentioned just briefly about you could hook up a dedicated pilot somewhere. God forbid we should have an active shooter situation or a fire where we had concern is that something that you could, somebody in your industry could respond to us quickly enough, or would that be a case where we would really have to have our own drone available?
So ideally, what we would do is work with the sheriff's department or whoever is the on-call. So it's a certain type of drone that they would use. It's a caged drone, so you can actually fly it inside. The companies that I am aware of would be able to respond to that. However, we would much rather work with the sheriff's department directly.
Okay, so I'm just curious how that logistics would work.
David, why don't you share your?
Yeah, it's a rather esoteric question, but hopefully you might have some anecdotal information to share. When this item first showed up on an agenda a while back, just coincidentally, I was having discussions with our code enforcement staff and representatives of our canal maintenance district. And part of the problem that we have is we can't trespass on properties to find violations. But neighbors across from other neighbors on canals frequently report violations of various codes. And so the first thing I did was found that there was a relatively recent state statute that expressly prohibits the use of drones for code enforcement or law enforcement purposes. But I could see a time when our canal maintenance districts might find the use of a drone to check the status of seawalls and all that. And when they do that, not looking for violations, nevertheless, the data, the information that shows up, and as well as our GIS surveying, may show a violation. Purpose wasn't to find the violation, but violations may show up as a result. Have you heard of any use of that drone, indirect drone evidence in any type of code enforcement that
So
has
there's-
not run
there's-
afoul of the state law?
There's one example of so they didn't use it. They absolutely said that they could not use that information, even though it was a clear violation of the code. We were doing that exact thing. We were flying a seawall, and they saw that there was a code violation, and we presented it to the code enforcement, and they said we absolutely cannot use this. So that is the only instance that I've run into with that, specifically in Florida. But we are using it for code compliance for the M4 in Colorado, which, like I said, is the for runoff for construction, and so we have been using it for that.
Thank you. It's an evolving area of the
It is.
law, obviously, that we'll pay attention to.
It is, and really
Because
the
we
biggest.
do, and it's routine for every government that I'm aware of, to use aerial photography that's available through the property appraiser's office, for example, to document violations. I'm not sure how you legally distinguish between that aerial photography and drone photography.
Right. From what I understand, and this is coming from the sheriff's department, it has to do with the vicinity that we're in. We had talked about, for an example, doing some tethered flights. So it would be as long as the drone is tethered, it will stay up in the air, and it was for certain events. But they didn't want to use it just because of the vicinity of the drone and being involved with the people in the area, personal protections, things like that. I'm not sure exactly why it works that way, but that's the way the laws are right now. But FAA and there's a pilot program for drones specifically as rules and regulations are changing almost monthly. It's kind of hard to keep up on all of them at some points, but we're hoping in the next year to two that we'll have an actual book of drone regulations from the FAA signed by the president. So, and I know that I actually applied to be on that pilot program, but I know that the only one that's local that they're working with is the Lee County Mosquito Control and using their drones. So they are giving insight as to how drones are being used and how it's affecting the community.
Do you, in the scope of that FAA work, do you foresee the potential that the FAA may preempt state regulation, including authorization of drones for enforcement work?
In all honesty, I have no idea what the FAA is going to do.
Okay.
I would like to see where it grows, but at the same time, making sure that people are educated and aware that drones aren't just peeking in your windows. That's the biggest thing that I'm an advocate for, to just make sure people understand that drones are used for other things than just playing with it as a toy or using it for malicious reasons.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good discussion.
Thanks.
Other items? Other questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And helping us.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, well, moving on then, the next thing on the agenda is recommendations from city officers, and the city manager is first on the list.
For the December 5th meeting, you mean on December 5th, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we have on there, even though it's under my authority to approve, I'm still gonna put on the council agenda for we got the bids in for the Sullivan Street and Olympia repair for our utility piping that broke a while ago. And we plan to do as much of the work we can at night, so we don't disrupt that area again. So I'm gonna put that contract on there, and the reason I'm putting it on there is that, so we can make it pretty public, that's all,
Okay,
rather than just,
okay,
that's the reason.
okay.
And again, a week from Friday, we'll put it again in the weekly report, we've done it quite a bit, and on Facebook, and the tree lighting starts at 5:30 at the corner of Marion and Taylor. It's been going on for years and years and years, and council will ride the fire truck to the tree and light the tree.
We look forward to it.
Okay. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Howard. City clerk.
Mr. Attorney.
City attorney.
Oh, I'm sorry, city attorney.
No, that's quite all right. I was just going to wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving. That's all I got.
Thank you, thank you.
I
And
have-
same to you.
Thank you.
I have
Yeah.
a question for the
Yes.
city attorney, please. Do we have any updates on Mr. Plattner?
Couldn't wait till
Just
after we
asking
ate.
because I got a question yesterday, so.
I've had questions on that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had asked the attorney that's working with me in my office, my partner, to make sure that if we were successful in the foreclosure, that there wouldn't be there aren't outstanding mortgages that we would have to pay off, and therefore may end up on the short side. And we have done a search, and we have found some mortgages. The question I have to analyze now that this information has come to me is to whether or not our liens are of a superior priority than those. And preliminarily, it looks like they might be. If that is the case, that we have a priority of those liens, then we will be moving forward we have not received any further settlement proposals since the last one that came before you.
And I,
Moving forward with the foreclosure of the code enforcement liens on the property.
okay, and am I correct in when I heard that he has now terminated his latest lawyer?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yes, he's done that,
Oh, yeah, that's old news.
okay.
yeah. No, I mean, his latest lawyer understood what the city's position was and just was not able to convince his client to make a proposal that would be more palatable to the city council.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm kind of done with it.
Well, I would simply say, keep an open mind, because at some point in time, the cost of litigation and the foreclosure and all that kind of stuff, you know, may not net the city what a reasonable settlement offer might be. So just keep an open mind, that's all I'm saying. And I have an obligation under the rules of, that I operate under, that if a settlement proposal is made, I can't reject it, I've got to bring it to you. But at the moment, there is nothing on the table.
I think Lynn, we all share your frustration, but business is business and Moses is Moses. And we have to stick with the business.
And I will point out, correct me if I'm wrong, the property has been posted and will be making no?
Lisa Hannon, zoning official. They were about to be in repeat violation, and we did post it, and they brought it back into compliance before it came back to the code board.
Okay, so at least that's something.
Let's just say, the situation tests our patience,
Yeah.
and the community's patience
Yeah.
as well.
Don't let it spoil Christmas.
But it is on my radar, and I did in fact make a note to make sure that I keep you updated on the progress of that case.
Thank you. Anything else for David? City Clerk, we have I actually brought it up for our boards and committees for drug-free Charlotte County and actually drug-free Punta Gorda. And I think it was something that we had discussed years ago when Kim Devine was on the council, and she was our representative, and then when, Jaha, when you joined,
Yes, I kind of just followed in that suit.
and are you the representative for both?
Yeah, because they usually have concurrent meetings.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we can just make sure that we include that on our list so that we
All right.
don't overlook it.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
But back to you, Karen.
Okay, boards and committees, starting with vacancies. We have a 3-year term as an alternate on the Board of Zoning Appeals, an unexpired term on the Punta Gorda Housing Authority, an unexpired term on the Building Board, and we have 2 3-year terms on the Planning Commission coming up. And then under nominations, we have a 3-year term as an alternate on the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. We have 1 eligible applicant. If you would like to nominate and appoint, you may do so by motion.
Nominate and appoint Mr. Gamblin.
And we need a second.
Oh, second.
Second? All in favor of Mr. Gamblin being nominated and appointed to the Historic Preservation Advisory Board as an alternate?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye?
Aye.
All those opposed? And Mr. Gamblin is appointed.
Okay, and then lastly, under appointments, we have 2 3-year terms. These are regular seats on the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. Your voting forms are coming around. You're voting for 2, please.
Okay, so Ms. Lyons is the outright appointee. We need a runoff between Ms. Andrea and Mr. Wooster.
If you would just write in the appointee's name, please.
I may need to do a recount. Hold on just a moment.
A recount?
A recount.
How appropriate.
Broward County.
Wait, this is
Do we have a
Florida.
dangling Chad?
Oh, no.
We are old, you know.
It's Florida. Fine, what would you expect?
This is Florida. You had one job.
Job I hate most
me.
each week.
Oh. Oh, no, we're going to make national news now.
I'm glad NBC left.
Fortunately, the press has left the building.
That was funny, actually.
I thought it only happened on the East Coast.
You have to measure their intentions.
And I'm glad that I did, because, and I'm gonna hold the second, I'm actually gonna rip up the second ballot. Well,
Okay.
I was one vote short, so we need a runoff between Ms. Adrienne, Andrea, I'm sorry,
Andre.
Mr. Gamblin and Mr. Wooster.
Oh.
There's 3 people tied.
Yeah, so Karen Lyons got it outright.
Outright.
Yeah.
We don't have 3 people tied. We can't have 3 people tied.
5 votes? How come
'Cause there
we
are
have
only
3
5
people
votes.
tied?
1, 2, 3.
We only have 5 votes.
There's only 5 votes.
I know.
Okay.
I'm heavily medicated.
Oh, now we know.
This is awesome.
We need to hire a canvassing board.
I frequently say that if I was good at math, I'd be a physician.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, geez, I guess we do have to have a canvassing board.
And now the press is coming back, quick.
Oh, no, they must have heard me. Don't tell them.
That's a lot. How about a musical interlude?
No.
Oh, my God, don't let Howard sing.
I guess what I can, while you count, I can say, under the next area is policy and legislation. The only thing I had was really just, you already covered, was the Light Up the Night on November the 30th.
Say it again.
And so Light Up the Night on November 30th. Please come and enjoy. I know that our city staff and our former mayor, Rachel Kiesling, have been very involved with this, and a number of other people in the community want to make this as great as we can. Appreciate everybody's involvement. As well, on December the 1st starts Founders Week. And so a lot of nonprofits in our community have been hard at work on putting together activities from December 1st, culminating on December the 7th, which is the actual founding of our city. So, which coincides with Pearl Harbor Day. But, and I think we'll be 131 years old. So, come and participate in all those activities that celebrate Founders Week. And, yeah, the only other thing I was going to say is that from my discussions with people in Florida League of Cities, that water is a very important issue, and that seems to be, dominate the discussion at
You want me
Florida.
to talk to him, for about 2 hours?
Gary, I know you could probably talk as long as we need you to. So, if Karen, are you still counting? Karen knows our canvassing board.
Yeah.
We could go with council member comments. So Debbie, I can start off with you.
I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and say that I have really enjoyed my beginning tenure on the board. I have met many, many wonderful people, both inside and outside of city government, and thank you for welcoming me the way that you all have.
And happy Thanksgiving
And
to
happy
you and
Thanksgiving.
everyone.
I want to wish everybody a very wonderful upcoming holiday. I have to ask Howard for a little bit of guidance right here. Living in the second oldest county in the country, I'm having a senior moment, and there was something I wanted to bring up, and I forgot what it was.
Two things.
Was it 2 or 3? Well,
First,
I dropped one.
You will be, you have to leave the next council meeting
Right.
at 11 a.m.
Yes, I mentioned that to
And
Nancy.
computer donation.
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me of that. Okay.
That's why we pay him the big bucks.
So I'm just mentioning it now. I want to bring it up for approval in probably the second meeting in December, if it's okay with you folks. Relative to the computers that are coming, the city computers that are going to be retired over the course of the first quarter, early part of next year. The GAP program has been very successful with their kids, to the point that the publicity that they got from our participation has allowed them to have excellent funding. They are requesting the 3 laptops, if we would choose to make available to them, that the police officers use, because it turns out they're very adaptable to the kids that are in the STEM program, much more so than just the standard Chromebook. They're very much more useful for those kids that are in advanced science and technology curriculums. And then the computer group that had also submitted to us towards the end of the last time, they would like to take the additional 17. I've talked to both organizations, and that would be amenable to them. So come December, I'm going to ask for your support to, again, donate these retired surplus computers to 501Cs in that order, and that they'll be able to go to very good use for our veterans, our students, and also our STEM, a couple of our STEM kids. So anyway, just giving a heads up on that point.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Lynn?
Just one thing. It was brought to my attention when I met with Howard this week that in our September 17th meeting, we voted and contradicted ourselves in our voting with regard to using the funds from the special reserve account, the special use fund, I should say. In part of our meeting, we discussed that we would use funds from the special use fund to do the loan for the Buckley's Pass project. And a little bit later in the meeting, we voted to use only funds from the special use fund to fund the Ponds Park renovations and the Citizens Master Plan. So we contradicted ourselves. And with regard to a loan for the Buckley's Pass project, we were very specific in the second vote that we not use funds out of the special use fund for Buckley's Pass. And I would like to have us revisit that.
Why
Can
don't
we
you just
do
do
it?
it now?
Can we do it in, okay, so I just want clarification. It was my understanding from the second vote that we made that we were not going to use funds from the special use fund as a loan for the Buckley's Pass project. Is
That was my recollection as well.
Okay, so then we want to change the record to reflect that we will not be using funds from the special use fund for
You
the
have to
Buckley's Pass.
make a formal motion.
Okay, so I would like to make a formal motion.
Can we put that as an item on the next agenda? So that it is
To make a formal deal
noticed?
out of it?
correct,
Okay.
It has
that
to
we-
be, so that
yeah.
it's noticed?
yes,
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
It's an accounting thing, that's all we're
Right.
doing.
Absolutely.
we just don't want to use the special use fund for the loan for Buckley's Pass. We're going to use funds out of the reserve account or whatever fund.
And
General fund
Thank you.
reserves.
I would say if they would all agree now that they're going to, that they agree that they want to do this now and add it to the agenda, that possibly they could do that. Or if you're more comfortable waiting, I'm okay with that too.
How about if,
you mean
may I make this
a- a-
Just
suggestion?
to
Amend-
add it as an agenda item now.
May I make this suggestion, since it seems like I'm seeing heads are nodding, that we make it as a consent agenda item?
On the next
Oh,
agenda.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay, that,
Okay.
I think that's preferable.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we clarified that because we were really very specific about not using the rest of those
Right.
funds right now until we know what's going on with FEMA, so,
Thank you
Okay.
for bringing that up.
okay.
Yes, and that way then consent agenda, it's not going to take up
We
discussion
were
time.
clear on intent, just not on action.
Yes.
And happy Thanksgiving to all.
Yes,
And that's all I have.
and to
Thank you.
as well, and to everyone.
The night of the tree lighting, as soon as we light the tree, I'm gonna run to the magical dinner. I'll be wearing tight little pants.
You're going to wear your elf
Oh.
I'll wear
costume.
my elf costume, yes, again.
Oh,
It's just let everybody know that the 29th, the 30th, and the 1st at the First Alliance Church is going to be, the Charlotte Players has a magical dinner, which basically is the Boar's Head dance. And so we do the minuet and things like that. So it'll be a good dinner. So if anyone's interested in coming, those 3 nights, it's available from 6 p.m. First Alliance.
all right. Thank you, Jaha. Karen, do we
Okay.
have a,
The recount results. The reason we have a tie is that you're not counting 5 votes, you're counting 10, and you voted for 2. So the results were 4 votes for Miss Lyons and 2 votes each for Andrea, Gamblin, and Wooster, hence the 3-way tie.
okay,
So if you would take the forms you are voting for and just writing in one name, Andrea, Gamblin, or Wooster, please.
Thank you.
You feel vindicated.
That's awesome.
Well, I shouldn't have made the mistake to begin with, but like I said, circumstances.
You just stick to your story, you're doing fine.
That's right.
I gotta admit, that was weird.
That was weird.
Never had that happen.
And the appointee is Mr. Gamblin.
Very good, thank you.
okay, great, thank you. Congratulations, Brad. All right, so we are moving to the point of our discussion where it's citizens' comments. Anyone who wishes to bring up anything, you can come to the podium. You have 3 minutes, and you have 3 minutes. I see nobody moving forward, so we're adjourned.